Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a quick roll call. We are joined by 6 of our board members. Our superintendent of schools, Dr. Timothy Harney. Our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, Dr. Ted Fulton. Our assistant superintendent for finance and operations, Mr. Rich Snyder. Our district legal counsel, Mr. Christopher Clayton. Our district clerk, Mr. Chris Oliva. And our student rep, Mr. Robert Honey. Just a few announcements. There are 2 opportunities for the community to participate during the Board of Ed meetings. The first is just before the board takes up its agenda, and the second follows the disposition of all agenda items. If you'd like to speak, we ask that you please go to the back of the room into the microphone. Any person who would like to speak must say where they live. If you are not a Bayport Blue Point resident, the board must authorize you from a majority vote. And for the convenience of the community, all Bayport Board of Ed meetings are videotaped and posted thereafter to the district website. And if you'd like to follow the district on Twitter, you can follow the district at BBP Schools. And if you'd like to follow Dr. Harney, you can follow Dr. Harney at BBP Soup for district-wide updates and news. At this time, we would do community or old business. Anyone who would like to address the board or the superintendent, this would be your time for any new or old business. Not hearing any, we'll move on to our superintendent report. Dr. Harney?
I think I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Fulton because I know he has some recognition, and then I'll kind of do my piece after that.
We're very happy to have Mr. Haas from the high school to introduce our students that we want to acknowledge tonight for their academic achievement.
They have enough. You want me to choose one in the back? Thank you, All right, that was a little loud. Thank you, Dr. Fulton. It is my honor and privilege to recognize several of our high school students tonight who have achieved the AP Scholar with distinction. If you remember back from our last board meeting when we did the academic presentation, this past year, we had the highest number of AP award winners that I have found in the history of our high school. There was actually, counting graduates, 115 students who did receive an AP award, starting with AP Scholars, AP Scholar with Honor, and then the top award of AP Scholar with Distinction. So we're going to be honoring them in 2 separate groups, this board meeting and the next, just to comply with the COVID standards. So an AP Scholar with Distinction, before I call them up, is somebody who has averaged a 3.5 or better on all of their AP exams taken, and they have a 3 or better on 5 or more exams. So this is a tremendous honor for these students. They've worked extremely hard. I know that their teachers worked extremely hard in preparing them, so I want to congratulate them and call them up where we have a certificate for them. So the first one we have is Jonathan Gualberti. Come on up. Congratulations. Next, we have Lindsay Lessing. Congratulations. Stephanie McDonough. Congratulations. Cecily Poix. Congratulations. Not sure if I saw Isabella Rose. Adelina Salloway. Congratulations. And Iman Shah. Congratulations. Thank you very much, and congratulations to all of you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. If any of the AP scholars would like to go home, we definitely would understand. Feel free to stay if you'd like. Congratulations, guys. Have a good night. At this time, we will turn it over to Dr. Harney for a COVID testing presentation. Dr. Harney?
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is, if it's okay, I think I'm going to sit from here and go through it, only because then I can use my microphone here if everyone's okay with that. So what I wanted to do, and I kind of put this together last minute, is I wanted to talk about is, our governor spoke yesterday, and he talked about his 5-point plan or whatever. There was a part that in it that talked about schools, so I do want to talk about that a little bit. Since the last meeting, first of all, I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. I know my own was a little bit different this year. It was definitely a little bit smaller. I guess I could lay around a little bit more, so that wasn't so bad. But I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. Since the last time we met, which I believe was November 17th, obviously you've seen from the letters that I've sent out, we've had a number of various positive cases within the school district. We've tried to really do a nice job with our contact tracing, so really I got to thank our administrators for all that they've been doing, and they really are doing it when they're talking about the contact tracing and trying to figure out who are our close contacts. I mean, even as last night, I know my letter went out last night, but that came to me probably about 7:30, 7:45 last night, so obviously people are working around the clock when it comes to this, so I'd like to just thank them. As we're going through this, is you're starting to see things around us in different districts, and you're going to hear me talk about the different zones tonight. You've heard the governor talk about this yellow, orange, and red zone, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And obviously, you've probably heard a couple of schools that decided to close this past week. There's a couple of school districts around this for different reasons, and obviously different communities have different things going on, so you have a couple of schools that are doing that. So you're going to hear me talk about the testing, things that we are kind of thinking about. There is nothing in stone right now. We're trying to gather as much information as we have. There are two districts that had to go through some testing already. They did it about a week and a half ago. So we tried to kind of put together a template of things that people are looking at as they're doing this. So let me just kind of walk you through this a little bit. So, okay. I'm working off two screens right now, so just bear with me a little bit. So this is kind of where we are today. So if you're looking at it, and you're going to hear this, is when the governor talks about percentages, they really talk about a rolling 7-day percentage, and it's done with over a 10-day piece. There's a formula. I have not been able to figure out the formula yet. And I'm not saying that it's because it continuously changes when he's going to talk about these zones. This is as of today, okay? And this was as of within Newsday. So you'll see Bayport is a 1.57 infection rate. Now what that means is it's over the 7-day rolling number. That's what it is. That's the average for the 7-day. It's a rolling number, okay? The reason I bring that up is because that is how the zones are being set up. So I just want you to kind of understand that. Blue Point is 0.43. Patchogue, I only put Patchogue in here because they're a close neighbor. I should have probably put Sayville as well as 3.71. And Sayville's a little bit higher right now. They've kind of have fluctuated between 5 and 6. I'm just putting out because these are the towns around us, okay? The Long Island infection rate, again, this is all based on the 7 days, is 3.9, where New York State is 4.0. So you see where the governor continuously gives his numbers. His numbers may be a little bit different from mine because his numbers are the daily infection rate. This is not the daily infection rate. This is basically over the 7-day rolling average. The reason I wanted to bring these in, because this is how the zones get played into, okay? So when you're looking at the screen behind me, so these are just kind of some things that I want to talk. What determines if and when BBP needs to consider COVID testing on students and staff? The reason I use this slide is because districts are being given the opportunity to stay open and try to keep students in school if you do certain things, if you fall in certain zones, all right? So the first part of this is the zone designation. So the state will acknowledge or let us know when we fall into a specific zone. The most difficult part of this is what designates a zone. So for example, and it was public knowledge, so I don't mind saying this, is when Hampton Bays and Riverhead last week were designated as a zone, they did an area. It's obviously not Suffolk County because you continuously hear them talk about micro clusters. I don't know what the size of a micro cluster is. I've asked Suffolk County Department of Health, so no one is really given a determine what is the size of a micro cluster. The things that's interesting for us is we cover 2 towns, Bayport and Blue Point. So what I don't know at this point is, will we be, Bayport, Blue Point as a whole, be considered a zone, or could it be either or, depending on the numbers that you saw previously? That I do not know, okay? How they do some of that configuration. And no one has really been able to give some clear guidance. When Governor Cuomo was talking yesterday, he said one of the things that's going to be taken into consideration, which was not taken into consideration before when they were talking about the zones, is this hospitalization rate. It really has to do with hospital capacity. They're talking about hospitals and what hospitals can handle. So that is something now that they have added to the metrics. So that's interesting, and see how that will play out. Obviously, our community infection rate, that will play into how they do the zone, so that will go along with the hospitalization rate. And then obviously the factors that are really controlling this is things that we've been talking about on a regular basis, right? The face coverings, the social distancing, the small social gatherings, keeping it more limited to families within your own household, and obviously the washing of the hands. All of that, those things get thrown together, and depending on where our infection rate determines on testing. So when I talk about testing, I'm talking about COVID testing, obviously. So the one thing that has come out, and it's changed a little bit, and you'll see this in the next slide, is depending on what zone you are in, depends on what percentage of your staff and students would need to be tested for the district to stay open. So I'll go into that a little bit more on the next slide. So what you're going to see here is yellow, orange, and red. So in the chart, and I will put all this presentation on our website, in the chart, the requirements continuously change. So if you're looking at the chart to the right, the colored chart, you can kind of see the yellow, orange, and the red, all right, to the best of our abilities. You'll see this you'll see the previous requirements, which is that middle column, and then the new requirements. And that's what I mean. As of yesterday, some of the requirements changed. Yellow, orange, and red is based on, right now, it's based on percentages. So for example, if a microcluster, I'll use that word, if a microcluster had that 7-day rolling average, and then they throw in a 10-day piece into that, was 2.5% or more, the district would fall into quote unquote a yellow zone, all right? If you went to 3%, it would be an orange zone, and if you went into red, it would be 4%. Okay, that's what the numbers were previously as you were looking at this. And then for each category, different requirements. And obviously there are different requirements even for the community, but I wasn't putting all that out here. I was more concerned about the school, obviously, the school community. But certain things happen to businesses and everything else in each of these zones as well. So if you're looking at the yellow zone, that one did not really change. So it used to be, actually the previous requirements prior to November 16th was you had to test 20% of your group within a week. And then what they did is they changed it on, I think it was November 16th, and they said, you know what? You can do your testing over a 2-week period, and you would have to get 20% of your school population, so it's really all faculty, staff, and students, who would be open to testing. And then if your percentage fell under the yellow zone percentage, you were good. You could stay open. Reason they're saying that, and we're seeing that even in our own schools, even though you've seen more letters from myself, it's not because the virus is spreading in schools. It's really coming from outside factors. So you're getting a lot of what I'll call one-offs. You're getting a one-person case because maybe they were in a close contact with somebody on the outside, or it came in. And then usually because of the protocols that we have placed and everything the staff has been doing, is it's kind of has stayed as that. That's why, minus last night, you really have not seen us where we've been quarantining whole classes because they're really focusing more on close contacts. So in this case, a yellow zone is, you would again do 20% over 2 weeks. If you went into an orange zone, it used to be the school had to close for 4 days, and then you had to do 20% of testing. Actually, before coming back, you had to do, anyone who came back for live instruction had to do, 100% had to be tested. And then for every week after that, it was 25% testing. That's how it used to be. Changed as of yesterday. And the change is actually in terms of, you can see that it really does appear that the governor is trying to keep kids in school. So the closure of school if you enter an orange zone does not need to happen anymore. That's one. 2, you can if you want, but you don't have to. Number 2 was the 100% of testing prior to everyone coming back is something that does not have to happen anymore. Really what happens is now they said schools must test 20%, so similar to yellow, of in-person students and staff each month. And what it would do is be on a monthly basis. Okay, where before in the yellow I was saying, you hit your mark, you're done. Then if you were to hit orange, you have to do 20% every single month. That's the difference, okay? So it's a smaller population over a longer period of time, all right? If you were to go to red, which again is at 4%, it was the same thing. A lot of it was the same. School closure, you had to close the school for at least 4 days. Then you had to do 100% of testing. And then after that, it was 25% of your population every single week. And it had to be a different 25%, okay? Changed as of yesterday. It basically was no worry about closures, no worry about testing the 100%, but they did say you'll have to test 30% over the course of a month. So these are the new, I'll use the word metrics that they gave us that we would have to look at. These are the minimum requirements. If you're listening to the governor, he said districts could do more than that. They cannot do less than that if they wanted in-person instruction. You could abandon the whole thing and go, okay, we're not going to do any of it, but then you would have to go to remote. That is another option, okay? That's not really an option I would like to look at. I would like to look at trying to keep the students here as long as possible. So that's kind of the zones. So really, what does it mean for us? And that's kind of where we are right now. So we're starting to have different conversations. So testing and next steps. So there's different ways to accomplish the testing. One, districts in general could apply for a limited service laboratory. I'll call it a license, but I don't know if that's the right word, but I'll just call it, you would apply for that. Or if you get Suffolk County Department of Health to help you, which is what happened in Hampton Bays and Riverhead, you don't need to get a license of your own. You can operate under their license. Or you can basically just send people out for testing, which is saying, okay, everyone just go out to City MD. But that means people are waiting for 3-4 hours and over the period of time. So that's those are the 3 options. Actually, there's probably a 4th option, is that, or you basically say you're closing and you're going to full remote. But then you're on full remote forever until you get out of the yellow zone or whatever it may be, okay? So we've done 2 things, really. Actually, I've done 3 things. We did apply for a limited service laboratory, and the reason we applied for it, because it was kind of, we spoke about, it's kind of no harm, no foul. It's okay for us to have it. It doesn't hurt us to have it. If we do and we wanted to operate as a testing site, we actually could, okay? It takes 3 or 4 weeks. We don't know if we'll be approved, but we put it in as we did. It was basically a $200 fee to it that we put forward, and that's really the most harm it's caused, okay? So that's 1. 2, the Superintendent Association has been working very closely with Suffolk County Department of Health, like they did with Hampton Bays and Riverhead. That is an option that I would really consider, because then we could just operate under their license, okay? They would help us with reporting, with staffing, and those type of things. The reason we still went forward, though, with our own license was it's more in preparation. When Hampton Bays and Riverhead had gone through this, they were the only districts at the time that needed to go through this. I don't know if at some point, 30 districts would be identified, and would Suffolk County Department of Health have the manpower to help all those districts or not. So that's why we looked at both ways. I've also had numerous conversations with City MD. Really how they can help us is they couldn't put somebody on site. Like I was trying to see if I could get somebody on site to kind of help us and grant a license as well. I have not been able to do that. City MD obviously would take people if we wanted them to go there. but you still might have that weight and those type of things, those conversations. So I've actually tried to look at all three scenarios. So in terms of testing, I would say really one or two are most viable, and I would hope Suffolk County Department of Health would be the way we would go if we were to move in this direction. We would use some of our staff. These are all conversations that we're continuing to talk. Where would we do it? We don't have all the answers yet. We're trying to figure out the number of sites, but we're starting to have all these type of conversations just so if we do get hit with a zone in preparation, we would be ready for something. That's really what we're doing. So really, next step for us is really to establish a COVID-19 testing center, okay? Right now, we're toying around with the idea of possibly 2 sites maybe, one up here and one down on the middle school Sylvan area as a possibility if we were to do this. What it would look like, we have no idea yet. We know we would need about 7 or 8 stations in it. There's a lot of things that we would have to still work out. What I am working on is creating and going to send out an interest survey. It's really just an interest survey of people who said that they would, it's not a consent form yet, it's just saying, yes, I'd be open to the idea of testing to help us meet our quota, okay? After that has happened, and if we were identified as a zone, then we would move forward and we'd say, okay, if we were to test here, we would then send out a consent form. So we would do it that way. Then we would get a consent form, and then we would say, we would need about 500 people, roughly. That's about what we would need to do. The other schools were doing about 200 a day, so we'd probably need about 3 days to do this, if it matches up to what other schools had done. So that's something. We would have to do training our professionals who were administering this. It could be school and or non-school personnel. You're allowed to do that, so we would look at that. Obviously, I'd like to try to keep it as much as our people because I'd like to try to create a comfort level for people as we're going through this. There's a lot of unanswered questions, but again, it's all going to depend on numbers. That's what a lot of it's going to depend on. And then really the only thing that comes out of it is we would have to file all the results in this, what they call this Eclairs repository, and it's basically just the only people who get that is the Suffolk County Department of Health in New York State. We're reporting every single day anyway, so it's kind of what we've been doing. And that is really just, if you did have a positive case, we would obviously have the conversation with the person and we'd go through our protocols as we normally would. So that's kind of how it would look. Do this one too. So I just really today wanted to give you kind of an overview of what we're looking at. We're just in the initial conversation phase. So our plan is working, our reentry plan. Obviously, our ultimate goal is to keep the students here as long as we can. The one problem we are starting to have, and it's not a Bayport Blue Point problem, it's a COVID problem, I guess it is. And I mentioned it at one point is the more staff that are getting quarantined, it's making it sometimes more difficult to operate a building. And when I'm talking about staff being quarantined, it could be because they were in close contact with somebody. It could be because another school had closed and they have stuff to do at home. There's all different reasons for it. So it's not because of anything we're doing here. It's just all variation reasons. So there may be a time when we end up having to close a school for a period of time because we don't have the staff. We can't even do it with the subs and those type of things because every district is spread very, very thin. So, but our ultimate goal is to keep the students here as much as possible. And then obviously I'm going to continue to ask for people's help to really monitor those gatherings that they're having, keeping the distance, wearing the masks, washing the hands. Those are the things that are really going to have an impact on us. And it's the same thing we say to everybody within the district on a daily basis because those are ultimately the proven ways to try to do this. So that's kind of that. It's really what I wanted to share tonight with everyone. I will open up for questions to the board and then to the community. As I said, we don't have answers to a lot of questions. We're just starting the discussions. I have the district-wide committee again this week. I'll start with them. We'll have other conversations with our health professionals. We've had conversations with our medical director, our doctors. We've started to have all those. It's more in preparation, but I could picture within the next week me sending out some type of interest survey to find out if we'd have the population to test, if we were to have to go that way, okay? But with that, I'll turn it over to the board for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Harney. Any questions from trustees? Ms. Byrne?
I was wondering about if we might have to, and I guess you don't know this yet, but if we might have to open up a site in Blue Point, just because that's a different, it's got different, I mean, that's the lowest number, so hopefully we won't. But do we have room in Blue Point Elementary if we had to?
Yeah, it's interesting, and you actually brought up a point, and I said it earlier on. Because we don't know how the micro cluster is worked or arranged, is it possible that you could have 4 schools, schools in the Bayport area, who would need to do testing and Blue Point would not, or vice versa? I would assume that there is that possibility. I'm not hoping either for any of it to happen, but if it would probably be the entire district so that we could use the entire pool. If we needed to do something at Blue Point, though, we could probably do that as well. We'd probably be taking over, honestly, the gymnasium. So the questions would be is, during the testing time, it's 2 things. Do you try to do it when you have everybody in, which has some positives and negatives, or do you say, you know what, we are going to go virtual for 2 or 3 days, and this way we can use our entire staff to do how we want. We can still teach the kids at home, and then use our staff to kind of do some of the testing. So those are even conversations that we're kind of toying around with, just so people have an idea. So you might even say, you know what, it might be beneficial for us to go virtual for 2 or 3 days so that we have the spaces and everything, and we don't have to worry about that. So those are all things that we're kind of discussing.
Any other questions from trustees? Any community members with any questions? Thank you so much, Dr. Harney. We appreciate the update.
You're very welcome. Thank
Dr.
you.
Harney, do you have more for your superintendent report?
No, I got to attend I think I might have said this is the Middle School National Junior Honor Society about a week or 2 ago, so that was a lot of fun. You know, obviously we're still doing, we had Mr. Haas tonight being able to recognize some of our AP students, so we're still trying to do a lot of things that we normally do. We're just starting to spread it out a little bit, so each board meeting you're going to see us try to bring you some more and more students that we're recognizing for different things, because they deserve it, and that's one of the things that we're going to continue to try to do. So the last thing is I just ask everybody in our community to continue to try to follow the protocols that we have in place so we can continue to do what we're doing. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Thank
Thank you, Dr. Harney, for the update. At this time, we'll go to our student delegate. Mr. Honey, how are you tonight, sir?
Good, how are you? Thank you. I don't have much to update on since the last time we met. A few notable things that have happened include 2 Bayport Blue Point High School seniors being recognized for their achievements in music at an all-state level. Additionally, elementary school students at Academy Street and Sylvan Avenue participated in a Thanksgiving food drive that was very successful. And with that, I mentioned last meeting that the Interact Club at the high school was hosting their annual Thanksgiving food drive. They were doing it virtually this year. They received over 800 donated items. The BBP class of 2023 is holding a book drive for their class fundraiser this year. And the BBP Spin Fusion Gym class, which is an elective offered at the high school, participated in a breast cancer awareness fundraiser where they raised over $200 in pair with the course's curriculum. And the music department's working on putting together a virtual concert for the holiday season. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honey. Any questions for Mr. Honey?
I have a question. At our audit meeting, we went over the student account funds, and there's quite a bit for the class of 2021. And with COVID, it's really hard for you guys to know what's going to happen, but I wondered if you could, if you have a chance, maybe even after Christmas, meet with his student council president and different people, and just kind of let us, I don't know, not even let us, but let the seniors know some ideas or something, or what's cooking. Because, you know, I was a senior, and I just see that money kind of being there, and hopefully we'll be back completely in the spring, but it's not looking that way. So, you know,
Yeah.
kind of give you some extra work.
Yeah, definitely. I'll look into that. Thank you, Ms. Byrne.
Thank you, Ms. Byrne. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Honey. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items the board would like to remove from the consent agenda and place on the regular agenda? Not hearing any, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items H, I, J, K, L, and M?
So moved.
Mr. Mr. Hall, second by Ms. Byrne. Any discussion? On the consent agenda, I would just like to welcome Ms. Benetti, our new district clerk. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're looking forward to bringing you onto the team. But just so everyone's aware, Ms. Benetti did work here in Bayport. She's just changing roles. So we're excited to have you, but thank you so much. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, we'll open up to community new business for any community members. Ms. Dungate? I think it'll probably be, we can bring it down to you if that works, but I think we should definitely have one so we can hear you.
I know that I can't ask what was discussed in executive session, but I was just wondering what the result of the audit committee was for the recess period being open.
The last audit meeting was Mr. Rodriguez, who came here and presented. There was a discussion about what the board would like to audit going forward in regards to certain areas, but it has not been completed. There'll be more audit committee meetings in the near future, but at this time, there has been nothing brought forth from the audit committee in regards to what areas we will be auditing.
So with all of the information that I provided to the board, and I know that some of my members are here, they did as well, and I know that the administration has advocated for us as well. Does that not weigh in on any of your thoughts personally?
I think it weighs heavily, absolutely. But at this time, we're going to continue in the direction that we stated in our prior email. And I'm sorry for any frustration, or I'm sorry for any people who are upset with that decision.
I think during the pandemic, it would be more of an ease on my members to be able to be with their families during this time. And I know I've voiced my opinion, but I'm voicing it again.
Thank you, Ms. Dungay, appreciate it. Any other community members with new business or old business? Not hearing any. Open it up to trustee new business. Motion to adjourn. Bill, Mr. Hall, second. Second. Mr. Krug, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you guys so much. We do have one more board meeting in December. Thank you guys. December 15th.